Tonight, President Trump's trade war heats up with sweeping global tariffs. What this will mean for you and your wallet.
I had to hustle and get a car before the Trump tariffs come into being.
And once again, Trump floats the possibility of a third term, but scholars say the Constitution clearly does not allow it. We break it all down. And on the eve of the most expensive state Supreme Court race in history, we are on the ground in Wisconsin. Just why this race is so important that Elon Musk is handing out million-dollar prizes to residents there. And we're following two major stories overseas tonight. At this hour, it's still a race against time to rescue earthquake victims trapped under the rubble in Southeast Asia. One woman pulled out alive after 60 hours. Plus,
what would you say to President Trump right now if he were standing here?
I would say that Greenland is not for sale. It never has been for sale, never will be for sale.
After Vice President Vance grabbed headlines traveling to Greenland on Friday, our team stayed behind to talk to Greenlanders about how they feel about all the potential changes in their country.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We begin with President Trump's plan for global tariffs and the impacts that could reverberate across all sectors of the economy as soon as this week. The president is expected to impose wide-ranging tariffs in the coming days, up to 25%, affecting all countries. The president is calling April 3rd Liberation Day, saying he's freeing Americans from foreign goods. The move is expected to drive up the cost of imported and U.S.-made cars by thousands of dollars. And questions are mounting about whether it will be American consumers who end up paying. Meanwhile, the president seems to be getting serious about a possible third term, but it is not constitutional. More on that in a moment. And we're standing by to talk with a congressman from Detroit about how voters in the heart of the nation's auto industry are responding to the tariffs. But first, ABC's chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce leads us off from the White House.
Tonight, President Trump preparing to unleash an unprecedented blitz of tariffs against America's trading partners, dubbing Wednesday Liberation Day.
They're reciprocal, so whatever they charge us, we charge them, but we're being nicer than they were.
But the president has been extremely vague on the scope and targets of the coming tariffs.
How many countries will be in that initial tranche?
You'd start with all countries, so let's see what happens.
I asked White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. Has the president decided on the scale and scope of these tariffs?
It's time for reciprocity, and it's time for a president to take historic change to do what's right for the American people.
Economists warn that tariffs on products from other countries are taxes paid by American businesses, who then pass the cost along to consumers by raising prices, which could skyrocket on everything from electronics to produce, apparel, and also cars, with Trump's 25% tariff on imported cars and auto parts also set to take effect later this week. Automakers scrambling. ABC News learning the president met earlier today at the White House with the chairman of Stellantis, one of the big three automakers. By one estimate, the cost of a new car could go up by as much as $8,000. Trump says he, quote, couldn't care less if car prices go up, saying, I hope they raise their prices, because if they do, people are going to buy American-made cars. But in Ferndale, Michigan, Karen Petke isn't waiting. She had planned to purchase her new Subaru in June. Instead, she rushed to the dealership.
I didn't want to take a chance that this car could go up thousands of dollars.
A new poll from the Associated Press shows Americans aren't sold on the president's trade policies, 60% disapproving, with 38% approving. And on his handling of the economy overall, 58% disapproving, 40% approving. But the president adamant his tariffs will encourage businesses to manufacture in America and ultimately boost the economy. And amid all this uncertainty, he is refusing to rule out running for a third term, though it's explicitly banned by the 22nd Amendment.
I don't even want to talk about it. I'm just telling you, I have had more people say, please run again. They said, we have a long way to go before we even think about that.
But tonight, even some Republicans clearly uncomfortable.
Well, as a Republican, I and many would not be open to the idea of Barack Obama running for a third term. And so I think the folks have to be careful here.
It certainly has a lot of people talking, though we know it is not possible based on the current Constitution. Mary Bruce joins us now. Mary, the president was just asked about the possibility of running against Barack Obama a short while ago. Tell us how he responded.
Yeah, well, Linsey, he was asked directly if he's concerned that seeking a third term means that Barack Obama could potentially run against him. But Trump said he would, quote, love that. And despite saying that he isn't joking about a third term over the weekend, he now insists that he hasn't looked into it. Linsey.
All right, Mary Bruce from the White House. Thanks so much, Mary.
Thank you.
The auto industry accounts for more than 390,000 jobs in Michigan, or 7% of the statewide working population. That's according to an industry lobbying group. And so for a take on what President Trump's tariffs will mean for people there, we're joined by Democratic Congressman Sri Thanedar, who represents Detroit. Congressman, thank you so much for talking with us. I'm sure many of the people you represent work in the auto industry. What are you hearing from them?
Well, people are concerned. People are concerned about what is this going to do to the cost of cars. Will new cars, especially in the lower range, like 30,000 plus range, those cars will become unaffordable for working class people.
The United Auto Workers Union, which endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris in the election, is praising Trump's tariffs, saying, "We applaud the Trump administration for stepping up to end the free trade disaster that has devastated working class communities for decades. Ending the race to the bottom in the auto industry starts with fixing our broken trade deals." Do you agree?
Well, look, many economists say this tariff is just going to raise cost. It's going to raise cost of cars by an average of $6,000 to $10,000. Now, when the price of affordable cars go up, people are not going to buy as many cars. More people are going to buy used cars or going to keep their existing cars. That will lower the sales, it will lower the profits, and ultimately it will end up American workers would lose their jobs. We may get into a recession because as cost of automobile goes up, people are going to stop spending money on large ticket item goods. And that's going to affect all of our economy. So this is in the long run not good for the workers. If you really want to help the workers, pass the PACT Act. Let all workers have access to organizing, becoming part of unions, collective bargaining. That is the way to help the workers, help them get skills and train them on skill set training. There is a ways to help workers, but raising auto prices is not the way to do it.
But then why do you think that they're supporting these tariffs then? Do you think that they're being short-sighted?
Well, sometimes people, in a way, think that these increased prices, the tariffs, because, even cars made in America, these cars go back and forth because there are parts that are still bulk. Many of the parts, American-made cars, are actually come from outside of the United States. Now, these will have tariffs. And the assumption that the auto companies will pay for these tariffs out of their own profits, it will not happen. The auto companies simply, American auto companies, will simply pass on this added cost to the consumer. Now, the people who buy these cars in the 30,000 range are everyday working class American families. Now, these families will not be able to afford these cars when they have to shell out another $5,000. Their monthly premiums will go up, their insurance cost will go up, and it will end up lowering the sales of automobile all across America, and that's going to hurt. And many economists have said that these tariffs are not helping American consumers, and ultimately this will end up hurting American auto workers.
Really appreciate your time, Representative Sri Thanedar. Thank you.
Thank you.
A federal judge has temporarily paused the Trump administration's plans to end protections and benefits for up to 350,000 Venezuelans. Some individuals with temporary protected status were set to lose work permits April 2nd and deportation protections April 7th. The federal judge in the case said the administration's efforts threatened to, quote, inflict irreparable harm on hundreds of thousands of persons whose lives, families, and livelihoods will be severely disrupted, cost the United States billions in economic activity, and injure public health and safety in communities throughout the United States. Severe weather is once again marching up the East Coast tonight. Heavy rain along the I-95 corridor with thunderstorms and tornadoes elsewhere. At least 6 reported tornadoes touched down across 6 states from Louisiana to Michigan. This one in Arkansas. And an ice storm in Michigan brought down trees and power lines. The governor there declaring a state of emergency. And yet another storm system is teeing up to cross the country to bring even more severe weather later on this week. Here's Trevor Ault.
Tonight, as millions in the east brace for severe weather, the storms are already deadly. At least 5 people killed, hundreds of thousands without power after a severe weather outbreak in multiple states.
Strong, damaging wind gusts and an isolated spin-up tornado is not out of the question.
That massive system triggering a state of emergency in Michigan after an ice storm wiped out electricity.
All night long, it sounded like gunshots and branches breaking, trees falling.
Destructive winds ripping off roofs in Jackson. 3 young children killed in Kalamazoo.
The family's vehicle was struck by a tree as they were traveling down the road. There's really nothing anybody could have done.
2 more storm-related deaths reported in Indiana. In Dothan, Alabama, 5 students injured after a possible tornado hit their school.
I saw the library doors fling open and a bunch of wind and debris started flying through the hall.
Beautiful tornado, dude.
And in Tennessee, our Victor Okendo on the scene of a massive cleanup.
We're just north of Nashville in Springfield, Tennessee. Down trees all over this property, some of them crushing these cars behind me. And if you look up at the roof, a tree crashed right through it.
And in Livonia, Louisiana, east of Baton Rouge, lightning striking multiple oil tanks, sparking this inferno.
Our thanks to Trevor Ault. Let's get right to ABC meteorologist Samara Theodore, who's tracking it all for us. Hey, Samara.
Hi, good evening, Lindsay. What's left of this storm is now crossing the I-95 corridor. Severe thunderstorm watches in place just north of Charleston into Raleigh, with heavy rain making its way into our nation's capital, Philadelphia, and the New York City tri-state area. Timing it out, the storm will start to depart overnight, giving way to a nice reprieve tomorrow. Drier conditions through a good portions of the country. Then our next storm is already beginning to brew. We're anticipating snow in the Rockies, and then as we head through the remainder of the week, we have another severe threat making headway. Greatest threat for tornadoes will be Wednesday into Thursday from Shreveport, Memphis, into Indianapolis. Then this storm does something unusual. It starts to stall out. It will meander, maybe even becoming stationary at one point. The reason that this is a great concern is because we could be looking at a multi-day event of heavy rain through areas like western Kentucky, Little Rock, Nashville, where they could see up to a foot or more of rain. So this could lead to life-threatening flooding. Lindsay.
A big concern there, of course. Samara, thank you. All eyes are on Wisconsin and tomorrow's high-stakes judicial election. The race is already breaking records as one of the most expensive judicial races in history, with political insiders calling it the most consequential election since President Trump took office and a litmus test for his agenda. Our senior political correspondent Rachel Scott is in Glendale, Wisconsin, live for us, and she joins us now. Rachel, this race is drawing national attention. Give us a sense of just how critical it is and what that says about the political landscape right now.
Well, Lindsay, we're talking about a single seat on the state Supreme Court. These are typically nonpartisan races that fly under the radar, but not this one. And because it is considered to be the most consequential election since President Donald Trump took office, really trying to get some sort of barometer for his agenda. And so right now you have the conservative-backed pick, Brad Schimmel, running against the liberal-backed pick, which is Susan Crawford. And this is a state that President Donald Trump won by fewer than 33,000 votes. We're talking about 1%. And so we've been out talking to voters. And it's been interesting, Lindsay, I'll tell you. We talked to one person who did vote for President Donald Trump, but yet he's backing the liberal-backed judge in this race. He says because it's about abortion rights. He believes that ultimately the decision was sent back to the states and that this is what is at stake in this election. When you're talking about this critical Supreme Court seat and a purple battleground state like this, it could have huge implications, not only for abortion rights, but also for the way the congressional maps are drawn in this state, which ultimately can impact the balance of the House of Representatives as well, Lindsay.
Really fascinating. And Elon Musk, of course, has been campaigning for the Republican candidate. He held a town hall there yesterday. How's his role playing with voters there?
He has an outsized role even in this election. It really showed you just how seriously President Donald Trump and Republicans are taking this. They want to do well here because they are very concerned that this can send the wrong message about what voters in such a critical state believe and perceive about how President Trump is doing at the White House. And so he did drop in. He hosted this town hall. And of course, he handed out two $1 million checks to two attendees that backed his organization's petition. Democrats did try to block those $1 million checks from being handed out. Ultimately, that was rejected by the state Supreme Court. Taking a page out of his playbook, again, he used that when he was supporting President Donald Trump in November as well, Lindsay.
Certainly did. All right, Rachel Scott for us in Wisconsin. Thanks so much, Rachel. There was another blow to the Trump administration's deportation efforts. A federal judge ruled on Friday that the administration cannot deport migrants to countries they're not from without notice or an opportunity to challenge their removal to a third country. And joining us now is our senior Washington reporter, Devin Dwyer. And Devin, the administration just this morning announced that they sent 17 alleged immigrant gang members to El Salvador. What more do we know about that? And does it run afoul of the judge's order?
Yeah, more judges, Lindsay, are now putting up roadblocks to the shipment of immigrants down to the El Salvador prison. 40,000 people held in that prison with a notorious record on human rights. And that judge issuing that stark order on Friday. And now many people are wondering whether the administration may have violated it. Those 17 alleged gang members sent to El Salvador just this morning included 7 Venezuelan nationals. Of course, that's not their home country. The administration has not yet responded to our questions as to whether or not those 7 Venezuelans were given proper notice and a chance to challenge their removal to a third country rather than to their home country. So that is very much something to watch. We are told, though, that those removals were not under the Alien Enemies Act. That's that law from 1798 that the president previously used to send down 2 plane loads a week or so ago of Venezuelans to El Salvador. That's, of course, been tied up in that explosive court challenge with Judge Boasberg. There's a hearing in that case this week, and that is the case, Lindsay, among others, that is before the Supreme Court as well.
And we know that there are other cases where Trump is asking the Supreme Court to intervene. What do you know about those?
Yeah, I mean, the tidal wave of legal challenges against Donald Trump is now hitting the Supreme Court. In addition to that Alien Enemies Act case, the Trump administration is now emergency applications asking the justices to allow it to fire 16,000 probationary workers, end grants for teacher training from the Department of Education, and, of course, continue with its plan to end birthright citizenship in this country. Those 3 things have all been put on hold by lower court judges. The Trump administration wants the justices to clear the way to let that go forward, and we could get a substantive read by the justices on how they feel about these Trump actions as soon as this week, Lindsay, and that will be very significant. The court has not been a rubber stamp for Donald Trump all the way through, but of course, conservative, 6 justices, 3 of those Trump appointed, so we'll be closely watching to see just what they say, Lindsay.
Trying to read the tea leaves there. All right, our senior Washington reporter, Devin Dwyer, we thank you so much as always.
You bet.
The death toll continues to rise in Myanmar after Friday's 7.7 quake rocked the region. At least 2,000 people were killed, even more missing, injured, or trapped. But despite the devastation, rescue efforts continue. Our Britt Clennett reports from Bangkok.
Tonight, the critical window to find survivors closing. 4 days after that powerful 7.7 earthquake rocked Southeast Asia, killing at least 2,000 people. After 60 hours under the rubble, a pregnant woman carefully lifted to safety, along with her 5-year-old child. Crews in the Thai capital of Bangkok tell us this is still a mission to find survivors.
I think there are still chances of finding survivors in there.
American service members joining the search where a 34-story building collapsed in Bangkok.
U.S. military personnel now entering the site to help the rescue effort.
A rescuer working with the Americans says they are using drones to search debris.
Are they successful so far?
No, because there's safety issues, because a lot of brick falling down.
Chanasorn Srinin told me his sister, one of the electrical engineers on the site, is among the missing.
So these are all the missed calls.
The massive quake collapsed buildings and temples for hundreds of miles from the epicenter. Tonight, relief workers saying hospitals in Myanmar are overwhelmed and there's an urgent need for food and clean water. That country in the middle of a civil war, making access and humanitarian efforts more complicated.
Britt Clennett joins us now amidst the rubble. Britt, do we know if any of the recent cuts to USAID have had any effects on relief efforts there?
Well, I think that's one of the real questions tonight, Linsey. The State Department says these cuts have not played a role in any of this. But as of tonight, Linsey, American teams have still not arrived in the quake zone in Myanmar. Linsey?
All right, Britt Clennett for us. Thanks so much, Britt. Another close call at Reagan Airport just outside Washington, D.C., involving a passenger plane and a military aircraft. A Delta flight was taking off when a cockpit alarm sounded, alerting the pilots that another plane was nearby. The incident happened at the scene of that deadly midair collision over the Potomac just 2 months ago. Our Gio Benitez has the latest.
Tonight, federal investigators looking into yet another incredibly close call between a passenger jet and a military aircraft near the same airport, Reagan National Airport, just 2 months after that midair collision with a Black Hawk that left 67 dead. This time, the FAA says the Delta flight was taking off for Minneapolis-St. Paul after 3 p.m. on Friday when alarms went off in the cockpit, alerting pilots that another plane was nearby.
Was there an actual aircraft about 500 feet below us as we came off of DCA? That's fine, I need to be affirming. Okay.
Those Air Force jets traveling from Langley Air Force Base in Virginia for a flyover at Arlington National Cemetery. Preliminary data showing the jets came within 6,000 feet of each other about 12 seconds apart when they received alerts to change course. This time on board the Delta flight, 136 passengers and crew. And tonight, as authorities investigate this newest close call, they are also looking into reports of an alleged fight inside the air traffic control tower. Authorities confirming an unrelated incident inside the tower also playing out last week. Authorities say a 40-year-old man is now on administrative leave after he was arrested and charged with assault and battery, reportedly involving a colleague in the tower.
Our thanks to Gio. A dramatic scene in Detroit after an apartment explosion left at least 13 people injured, 6 of them children. Police say the blast happened around 4 in the morning. The force was so powerful, in fact, that some exterior walls crumbled away. One father says that he threw himself atop his small children to save them from harm. Authorities say 2 adults and a 3-year-old from the same apartment were treated for severe burns. They remain in critical condition. The cause of the explosion is still under investigation. Authorities in San Diego are investigating the death of a 9-year-old girl following a dental procedure performed under anesthesia. Dreamtime Dentistry says the girl was continuously monitored and showed no signs of complications, but a medical examiner's report says she was asleep at the time she was sent home. Her family says she never woke up. The girl was later pronounced dead at the hospital. There's still no word on the exact cause of death. Today is International Transgender Day of Visibility, a day for recognizing trans and non-binary people around the world. It comes as the Trump administration rolls back protections for trans Americans. Meanwhile, at least 14 states have adopted laws restricting which bathrooms transgender people can use in certain buildings. And since 2020, about half of all states have passed laws barring transgender people from sports competitions aligning with their gender, and have also banned or restricted gender-affirming medical care for minors. The first International Transgender Day of Visibility was held in 2009. And still ahead, Tesla's torched. Violence targeting Elon Musk's company is spreading. We'll tell you where a possible arson destroyed more than a dozen vehicles. Plus, Greenland on edge after Vice President Vance's visit. People on the world's biggest island worry what the next move might be from the White House.
President Trump talks about the riches of Greenland, the mineral riches of Greenland, oil and gas off the coasts. Are you concerned about developing that and with the United States and the impact on the environment?
When you have a slogan which is drill baby drill, and we have a ban against oil extraction here in Greenland, it really shows it, it's moving in 2 different directions.
Welcome back, everyone. It is one of the most remote places on the planet. And tonight, Greenland remains in the world spotlight after Vice President Vance traveled there on Friday with his family. Over the weekend, the country's prime minister reiterated that the U.S. will not get Greenland. But in tonight's Prime Focus, we wanted to see how residents of Greenland feel. So after the VP jetted out on Friday, our Terry Moran and his team stayed behind all weekend, taking the temperature of Greenlanders who are not used to all this attention.
Greenland, the world's largest island. Mammoth glaciers consume over 80% of its vast and rugged terrain. With a sparse population of just 57,000 people, mainly Inuit natives, concentrated along its southwestern coast, it's the least densely populated region in the world. This land, long on the fringe of world events, is now at the center of an international tug-of-war that has stunned and alarmed the people here.
We need Greenland, very importantly, for international security. We have to have Greenland. It's not a question of, do you think we can do without it? We can't.
What would you say to President Trump right now if he were standing here?
I would say that Greenland is not for sale. It never has been for sale, never will be for sale.
Greenland is a self-governing territory of Denmark, and for decades it was home to several U.S. military bases. But now, just one. Vice President J.D. Vance traveled to the far north of Greenland and the American Space Force base there, despite objections from many Greenlanders.
Hey guys.
Who see this trip as an aggressive escalation of Trump's threats to seize the territory.
I think that you'd be a lot better coming under the United States security umbrella than you have been under Denmark's security umbrella.
How would you say people are responding to the Vice President's visit?
Well, quite negatively, to be honest.
But why does the Trump administration suddenly care so much about one of the most remote places on the planet?
If you look at Greenland right now, if you look at the waterways, you have Chinese and Russian ships all over the place. You have warships all over the place going through right along Greenland. We're not going to let that happen. We cannot let that happen. Or if it's going to happen, we have to be protective of our country.
Greenland's location is strategically critical, dominating the North Atlantic, controlling crucial sea lanes now opening up as the planet warms. Russia and China see all that too, and they're making their own moves in the Arctic. And as Greenland's glaciers melt, the land beneath them holds an enormous repository of mineral wealth, which Trump also says the U.S. wants.
Right now, the Greenland economy is based on fishing, on tourism, and on handouts from the Danish government, but there are riches in this wild land, especially those rare earth minerals. Very difficult to mine in this environment, but the sky's the limit for their value. And as the Arctic sea ice melts from climate change, sea lanes open. Greenland is poised for an economic breakthrough.
A recent study found that Greenland has 31 of 34 rare earth materials defined as critical for modern tech economies by the EU beneath this pristine landscape.
President Trump talks about the riches of Greenland, the mineral riches of Greenland, oil and gas off the coasts. Are you concerned about developing that and with the United States in the impact on the environment?
When you have a slogan which is drill, baby, drill, and we have a ban against oil extraction here in Greenland, it really shows that, it's moving in two different directions.
Aya Chemnitz represents Greenland's interests in the Danish parliament.
What I'm trying to do is to make sure that as many decisions are being made here, first and foremost, really representing the Inuit voice, the Greenlandic voice, is very important for me.
Mining has long been a part of Greenland's story. The island is littered with shuttered mine sites. But with fewer than 100 miles of roads on the entire island, there are daunting infrastructure needs. And exploiting this land for its minerals will compound severe challenges from climate change here. A NASA report estimates that global sea levels will rise by 24 feet if all of Greenland's glaciers melt. Our James Longman got a first-hand look at this slow-motion disaster in 2021.
Walking through Greenland's ice sheet, and it's absolutely stunning. The ice is something like 60 meters thick. In some places, it's as thick as 2 miles.
So President Trump's strategic and economic plans for Greenland would fundamentally change the deeply traditional life here, and that's rattled many Greenlanders. Masana Egeda is the editor of Greenland's main newspaper.
When you first heard Donald Trump say, America's going to get Greenland one way or the other, what did you think about that?
I think I reacted as many other Greenlandic people did. We were shocked, to be honest. We didn't think that rhetoric was possible because we are an ally to the U.S. We do not need to become Americans to be a great asset or a great partner or a great friend to the U.S. as Greenland already think they are to the U.S.
And President Trump's push for the U.S. to get control of Greenland also has Denmark firing back.
We do not appreciate the tone in which it's being delivered. This is not how you speak to your close allies.
But Trump's brash land grab plans have already transformed this beautiful Arctic wilderness, and many Greenlanders here fear what that change might mean.
People are actually sleepless about this because not knowing what the future holds, we don't know how he's going to do it. Is he going to strangle us economically? Is he going to put troops on the ground? It's everybody has their own fear right now, but because it's not so clear, but it is so intense, I think that scares people.
You can't control, you can't own another country, and you can't decide on behalf of us. We have self-determination here in Greenland, and nobody can tell us what to do. The future is completely up to us here in Greenland.
They are certainly resolute and defiant about that. Our thanks to Terry Moran. Coming up, we hear from those astronauts who spent 8 months on the space station when they originally planned for 8 days. And baseball is trying out new bats, and they're already having an impact. We take a look by the numbers.
Aaron Judge, one man out. Goldschmidt stays put. Driven deep to left field. He's done it again. See ya. A monster 2-run home run. Can't keep him in the park. 2-1 Yanks.
Good problem to have there. The Yankees hitting home runs is nothing new. After all, they're called the Bronx Bombers for a reason. But after a smashing start to the season, everyone started looking for the secret to the pinstripe power. Turns out the secret is more like science, and now we're studying it by the numbers. The team's newly designed torpedo bats are all the talk of baseball. New York has gone deep 15 times in the first 3 games, tying an MLB record. The fat part of these bats are made bigger, allowing for better contact and giving them a bowling pin shape. 5 Yankees have already homered at least once using the bats, and more players are starting to think about using one. They may look different, but as long as the bat is 42 inches long or less with a barrel that doesn't exceed 2.61 inches in diameter, it's all perfectly legal. The idea behind the new design is actually pretty simple. Move more of the wood toward the sweet spot of the bat, about 6 or 7 inches from the end where hitters try to make contact. Pitchers may be crying foul, but Major League Baseball probably doesn't mind. More home runs typically means higher attendance and TV ratings, and the dingers have actually been down. Last year, there were 5,453 home runs. That's a 10% dip from the year before and a 25% decline from 5 years ago. The Yankee power surge so far this season isn't just record-setting, it is revolutionary. The most home runs hit by a team in a season is 307. At their current pace, the Yanks would smash 810. And still ahead, he's only 22 years old, but actor and musician Finn Wolfhard is already making his directorial debut. He'll explain the challenges of making a slasher film funny. And the Great Depression 95 years ago was exacerbated by tariffs. So what could the president do to avoid a similar fate? Stay with us. Welcome back. A terrifying home invasion for a former NFL great. Tesla's targeted overseas, and another Beyonce bump for the economy. Those stories and more in tonight's Rundown.
Italian police are investigating a possible arson, a fire that local reports say destroyed 17 Tesla EVs at a dealership on the outskirts of Rome. Tesla Italy says it's cooperating with police and even turned over surveillance video from the vehicles themselves. European sales of Tesla vehicles dropped 49% in the first 2 months of this year. This all coming as CEO and owner Elon Musk's affiliation with the Trump administration draws global protests to Tesla lots around the world. Astronauts Barry Butch Wilmore and Sunita Suni Williams talk about their extended stay on the International Space Station after finally returning to Earth. They were scheduled to return to Earth in June of 2024, with plans to stay at the International Space Station for about a week. But due to problems with their vehicle's thrusters, they spent an unplanned 9 months in space. During their unexpected time in orbit, the two assisted with science experiments, spacewalks, and maintenance projects, all while looking ahead to the future. This video shows the moment armed gunmen broke into the home of former Seattle Seahawks player Richard Sherman, the video not showing that his family was inside at the time. Local officials say the break-in occurred just after midnight on Sunday, which was Sherman's 37th birthday. Scary situation that my wife handled masterfully and kept my kids safe, If anyone has any info that can help find these people, please reach out. Sherman wrote on social media. Police say the robbery remains an open and active investigation. After LSU's 72-65 loss to #1 UCLA, Coach Kim Mulkey had a curt exchange with the student reporter, who asked about the second straight year the team lost in the Elite Eight.
Coach, it's the second straight year you guys get eliminated in the Elite Eight. Yeah. Terrible.
How many Final Fours you play in?
None.
So it's probably pretty good, huh?
Yeah.
The student reporter went on to finish his question as Mulkey smiled on. As a coach, Mulkey has led her teams to 5 Final Fours in her career. And as a player, she went 4 times at Louisiana Tech. And cases of pet cats infected with bird flu are on the rise across the U.S. The Department of Agriculture says dozens of cases involving cats have been reported this year. Many of the infections linked to raw food or milk. Health officials say there is no evidence cats can transmit bird flu to humans. And are you looking for an Airbnb Beyonce? That's right. Searches for Airbnbs in cities along Beyonce's Cowboy Carter tour have skyrocketed since tickets went on sale. Searches for stays in Houston, Beyonce's hometown, at the time of her 2-night stop have increased by 620% compared to the same time last year. Excitement in local economies is also surging as the Beehive won't just be filling Airbnbs, but also restaurants, shops, and attractions.
It's been one of the pillars of President Trump's presidency, tariffs. And as he vows to impose up to 25% tariffs affecting all countries as of this week, what do tariffs really do and how can they actually impact us? Our Elizabeth Schulze breaks it all down in our latest Cashing In.
We've been hearing a lot about tariffs from President Trump and how the U.S. is threatening or imposing tariffs on its biggest trading partners like Canada, Mexico, China, and the EU. But what exactly are tariffs and how do they affect the prices that we pay? Tariffs are fees that companies pay the U.S. government when they import goods across the border. American businesses are basically writing a check to the U.S. Treasury in order to bring their products or materials into the country. Companies then have to decide if they'll be able to absorb those costs or if they pass them down to customers. Often it's customers who end up paying the price. So let's say the U.S. imposes a 25% tariff on avocados from Mexico. Hypothetically, if the company that imports those avocados decides to shift the entire cost of the tariff to its customers, the price of your avo goes from $2.99 to $3.73, or 25% more. So why might the government want to risk hiking prices for American households? Let's do a quick lesson in Trade 101. Every year, more than $3 trillion worth of goods flow into the U.S. from other countries. Those are imports. American companies ship out about $2 trillion worth of products and materials. Those are exports. Imports and exports are a vital part of the economy. Think about a car, for example, which needs on average 30,000 different parts from around the world, from tiny nuts and bolts to the engine to assemble. America's biggest trading partners are Canada, Mexico, China, Germany, and Japan. Some politicians see tariffs as an economic tool to negotiate better trade deals or other policy issues with those partners. Another key goal of tariffs is to encourage American companies to buy more stuff, say car parts or avocados, from domestic manufacturers instead of overseas. Then they avoid paying those extra fees. We've seen this happen before. In 1930, Congress passed the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. It put an average 45% tariff on hundreds of products, from corn to cheese to steel. The intention was to encourage U.S. businesses to buy more from American farmers struggling during the Great Depression, but it kind of backfired. Instead, other countries retaliated with their own tariffs on American products shipped overseas. Global trade plummeted by 66% between 1929 and 1934. And ultimately, American companies ended up raising prices on American consumers. And that's a key takeaway from history. Typically, companies can't afford to pay for the added cost of tariffs all by themselves. So they'll pass down higher costs to consumers in the form of higher prices. Tariffs in small doses might be a good negotiating tactic, but on a large scale, they could end up hurting your bottom line. And that's what you need to know to keep cashing in.
Very helpful. Our thanks to Elizabeth. Our next guest has faced demogorgons in Stranger Things, busted ghosts in New York City, and played packed music venues with his band, the Aubreys. Now he's adding writer and director to his stacked resume with a sharp, funny, and bloody take on the classic slasher film. Let's take a look.
Mike? What is happening right now?
There's a killer on the loose!
What?
The killer is someone that we all know.
Finn Wolfhard joins us now in the studio to discuss his directorial debut in Hell of a Summer, a hilarious summer camp slasher set to hit the big screen this week. Welcome, Finn.
Hi.
That looked really scary and bloody and screamy.
It really, it is.
What kind of ride would you say that audiences can expect? And also, how does your character, Chris, play into that?
Yeah, so, well, the movie's a comedy slasher set at the summer camp. And I would say, you know, it's leaning also into a coming of age kind of teen comedy as well. So it's obviously got scares for horror fans, but also got a lot of sweet moments and comedy in it as well.
And so you wear so many hats in this. Not only are you in front of the camera starring in it, but you also are directing it. How did you prepare, and what made you decide you wanted to go in this direction?
Yeah, well, I, ever since I was like very, very little, was obsessed with the process of filmmaking, and it was something that I was always incredibly interested in. And then through performing as a young kid, obviously being a part of Stranger Things and a part of some really great movies, I was lucky enough to be able to learn a lot from different directors and just kind of stay on set and watch them work. And then when I started, I met my partner, Billy Brick, who I wrote and directed this film with. And we had a very shared sensibility when it came to comedy and specifically also slashers. And so it just felt like kind of the perfect first feature.
I don't know how you have time to do it all, because not only do you act and direct, but you also sing. You have a new album called Happy Birthday.
Yeah.
So has this been a long passion of yours as well?
Yeah, they kind of came together at the same point in my life, like at a very young age. My mom, at the same time as she showed me the Beatles, she also showed me books and documentaries about the making of old horror films, and they kind of came hand in hand and really offered me, I think some escape also from just like feeling I was a bit of an anxious kid, and I think that these things, you know, music and movies and comedy, I think really got me out of my shell.
And so many people are anxious to see the final, the last of series of Stranger Things.
Yeah.
How does it feel for you to now say goodbye to this show and your character after such a long run?
Oh, well, it's I would say, you know, it's emotional. You know, starting that show, I was 12 years old. I'm 22 now, so it's 10 years of my life. So, you know, you're saying goodbye not only to these characters and these experiences of like filming the show, but you're also saying goodbye to the day-to-day of just seeing the same people every day and, you know, having a little sort of like family that you make. So, you know, I'm really excited for people to see it. I'm excited that it's a new chapter in all of our lives and careers and with people that have worked on the show. And yeah, I'm just excited for people to see it.
Is there any chance we could get you just to give us a little teaser of what to expect?
I mean, what to expect? I feel like fans will really appreciate how much the Duffer Brothers, who wrote and directed the show, like appreciate our characters and really sort of go back and I think remind people why people started watching the show in the first place, and really getting back into some old kind of group dynamics that we haven't been able to see really in the last few seasons. Yeah, I think it's sort of one of those things where it's, you know, one last time. It's sort of like the Lord of the Rings, bittersweet.
Finn, hey, so good to have you on.
Thank you so much.
Hope you'll come back on.
Yeah.
We want to let our viewers know Hell of a Summer will be in theaters this Friday, April 4th. Few actors could match his range or longevity. Tonight, we take a look back at the life and career of Richard Chamberlain. With his California good looks and easygoing charm, he burst onto the TV scene as the handsome Ernest Dr. Kildare at just 27. And it was then Richard Chamberlain cemented himself as the heartthrob of American girls.
Oh, yeah, I'm Kildare.
Receiving more than 12,000 fan letters a week. Chamberlain won his first Golden Globe for the role of James Kildare. He would go on to be nominated for 4 Emmys and win 3 Golden Globes. Worried about being typecast as a teen idol, he starred on stage as Hamlet and as Captain Von Trapp in the musical The Sound of Music. But it was as a romantic lead in the original NBC miniseries Shogun in 1980 when Chamberlain gained his greatest fame.
Many lands in the Americas have already been plundered by the Spanish.
Known as the king of the miniseries.
But to be a man on your terms is to be no priest.
The 1983 ABC miniseries The Thornbirds became the second most watched miniseries at the time, behind Roots. For most of his career, Chamberlain's persona of leading man forced him to hide the fact that he was gay, which he discussed in this interview with the Television Academy.
I'd grown up in the 30s, 40s, and 50s when being gay was not an option. I was a romantic lead, for God's sake.
But in 2003, at 69, in his autobiography Shattered Love, he publicly came out.
It wasn't until that late in my life that suddenly all that fear, all that self-dislike, it was as if an angel had put her hand on my head, it's going to make me cry, and said, it's over, you know, all that part is over. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Richard Chamberlain passed away in Hawaii from complications of a stroke 2 days before his 91st birthday. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.